Have you ever noticed that laughter is one of the few sounds you can recognize instantly, no matter where you are in the world? You don't need to understand someone's language or know anything about the people around you. Whether you're sitting in a busy cafe in Paris, walking through a quiet neighborhood in Japan, or watching children play in a small village thousands of miles from home, the sound of laughter is unmistakable. It crosses cultures, generations, and languages with remarkable ease. Long before we speak our first words, many of us have already laughed, and for most of our lives it becomes woven into everyday moments without us ever stopping to think about it. It feels so natural that it almost seems impossible to imagine life without it. Yet for something that is so familiar, laughter remains one of the greatest mysteries of human behavior. Scientists have spent decades studying it, placing volunteers inside MRI scanners, recording conversations between friends, observing babies only a few months old, and even listening to the playful sounds made by chimpanzees and rats. Despite all of that research, there is still no single explanation that fully answers one surprisingly simple question. Why do we laugh at all? Not why a particular joke is funny or why one person finds something amusing while another does not, but why evolution would ever produce such a peculiar behavior in the first place. At first glance, laughter seems almost unnecessary. It doesn't help us run faster when danger appears, it doesn't make us physically stronger, and it certainly doesn't help us gather food or build shelter. Nature is usually very economical, favoring behaviors that improve an animal's chances of surviving long enough to reproduce. Every heartbeat, every blink, every instinctive reaction has been shaped by millions of years of natural selection. If laughter has survived that incredibly long process, then it has almost certainly been doing something important for our ancestors, even if that purpose isn't immediately obvious to us today. To understand where laughter truly comes from, we have to leave behind the modern world entirely and travel back millions of years, to a time before there were cities, books, music, or even language itself. The forests of ancient Africa looked very different from the landscapes we know today. Towering trees stretched high above the ground, their branches forming dense green canopies that filtered the warm sunlight into shifting patches of gold. Thick vines hung between ancient trunks, insects filled the humid air with a constant chorus, and narrow streams quietly wound their way through the undergrowth. It was in these forests that some of our earliest ancestors lived their lives, unaware that their descendants would one day wonder where laughter began. If you had been able to quietly observe one of these early groups, you might have witnessed a scene that felt surprisingly familiar. Two young individuals begin chasing each other through the forest, darting around fallen trees before tumbling together into the leaves. From a distance, the encounter almost resembles a fight. They shove one another, grab at each other's arms, expose their teeth, and wrestle with surprising energy. Yet something about the interaction is clearly different from genuine aggression. Neither animal appears frightened, and every few moments they produce curious rhythmic panting sounds that researchers still hear today whenever young chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans engage in playful wrestling. These vocalizations are noticeably absent during real conflicts, leading many scientists to believe they serve a very important purpose. They communicate, without words, that this apparent struggle is only a game and that no real harm is intended. Some evolutionary biologists believe these playful sounds may represent the earliest ancestor of human laughter. If they are correct, then laughter did not begin because something was funny in the way we think of humor today. Instead, it may have begun as a simple signal that allowed young members of a social group to play rough without accidentally turning that play into genuine violence. Whenever the excitement became intense, those rhythmic vocalizations reassured everyone involved that the situation remained safe. They transformed uncertainty into trust, allowing stronger social bonds to develop while avoiding unnecessary conflict. Over millions of years, as our ancestors' brains became larger and their social lives increasingly complex, that ancient signal may have gradually taken on new meanings. What once reassured playmates during a wrestling match eventually became associated with any moment in which tension suddenly disappeared. A frightening situation turned out to be harmless. A misunderstanding resolved itself. Someone stumbled over a rock but stood back up smiling instead of injured. Again and again, the brain learned to associate relief with laughter, until one of evolution's oldest safety signals slowly transformed into one of humanity's most recognizable expressions of joy. As our ancestors continued evolving, their lives became increasingly dependent on one another. Unlike many animals that can survive largely on instinct alone, early humans thrived because they cooperated. They hunted together, protected one another from predators, cared for injured members of the group, and shared knowledge that no single individual could discover alone. Living in a close-knit community offered tremendous advantages, but it also introduced a new challenge. The larger the group became, the more opportunities there were for misunderstandings, disagreements, and conflict. Maintaining trust was no longer simply helpful, it became essential for survival. Laughter appears to have grown alongside this increasingly social way of life. Modern research has revealed something rather surprising about the way we laugh. Although we often associate laughter with jokes and comedy, those situations account for only a small fraction of our laughter each day. Researchers who spent years observing ordinary conversations found that people are around 30 times more likely to laugh during casual social interactions than while listening to an actual joke. Friends laugh while greeting one another, co-workers laugh during routine conversations, families laugh over dinner, and strangers often exchange brief laughs during otherwise ordinary encounters. In many of these moments, nothing particularly funny has happened. Instead, laughter seems to function almost like punctuation in a conversation, gently reinforcing feelings of comfort, familiarity, and belonging. This observation puzzled scientists for many years because it challenged one of our strongest assumptions. We tend to think of laughter as a response to humor, yet humor itself may only be one of many ways to trigger a much older social behavior. Some neuroscientists now believe that the emotional connection created by laughter may actually be more important than whatever caused it in the first place. When two people laugh together, their breathing briefly synchronizes, their facial expressions mirror one another, and a remarkable series of changes begins taking place inside the brain. Networks involved in emotion, memory, movement, and social understanding all become active within fractions of a second, creating an experience that feels effortless even though it requires extraordinary coordination. Perhaps the most remarkable part is how little conscious control we have over it. Try, for a moment, to produce a completely natural laugh simply because you decided to. It is surprisingly difficult. You can imitate the sound, but it rarely feels authentic. Genuine laughter tends to arrive on its own, bubbling up almost before we've realized what's happening. This is because much of the process occurs in parts of the brain that operate beneath conscious awareness. Long before your thinking mind has finished processing a surprising situation, deeper emotional circuits have already begun preparing the muscles of your face, your chest, and your diaphragm to produce one of humanity's most recognizable sounds. Inside the brain, laughter is not created by a single laughter center. Instead, it emerges from an intricate conversation between many different regions working together. The frontal lobes help recognize patterns and notice when our expectations have been violated. The temporal lobes contribute meaning, helping us understand language, social situations, and the intentions of other people. Deeper structures within the limbic system evaluate the emotional significance of what we've experienced, while areas of the motor cortex prepare the coordinated movements required to produce laughter itself. All of this unfolds in an instant, so quickly that we experience it as one seamless reaction rather than millions of tiny decisions occurring throughout the brain. One of the most widely accepted theories of humor suggests that laughter often begins when our expectations are gently broken. The brain is constantly predicting what will happen next, constructing a quiet model of the world from every conversation, every familiar face, and every ordinary experience. Most of the time those predictions are accurate, allowing us to move through daily life without consciously analyzing every detail around us. But every now and then something unexpected happens. A sentence ends in a completely different way than we anticipated. A magician makes an object disappear. A friend says something delightfully absurd that somehow still makes perfect sense. For a brief moment, the brain discovers that reality has taken a different path than expected. If that surprise turns out to be harmless, laughter often follows. This idea helps explain why timing is so important in comedy. The pause before a punchline is not merely for dramatic effect. During that brief silence, the listener's brain is actively constructing an expectation about what comes next. The joke works because it gently leads the mind in one direction before revealing another. The laughter is not simply a reaction to the words themselves, but to the brain's realization that its own prediction was delightfully incorrect. In a sense, every successful joke is a tiny puzzle that the brain solves almost instantly, rewarding itself with one of evolution's oldest social signals. Of course, humor is only one path that leads to laughter. Anyone who has spent time around young children knows they can erupt into uncontrollable giggles over things that adults barely notice. A parent hiding behind their hands before suddenly reappearing. A playful chase through the backyard. A funny face made across the dinner table. Developmental psychologists have found that babies often begin laughing months before they can speak their first words. Long before language develops, the brain is already capable of recognizing playful surprises and responding with joy. It is as though laughter arrives first, while words simply catch up later. For many years, scientists assumed that laughter was something uniquely human, a behavior that emerged only after language and complex thought had evolved. It seemed reasonable. After all, we tell stories, invent jokes, use sarcasm, and laugh at ideas that require a deep understanding of the world around us. Surely that must separate us from every other animal. But as researchers began spending more time carefully observing animals in the wild and in research settings, they started noticing something unexpected. The more closely they listened, the more familiar certain sounds became. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, produce playful vocalizations that are strikingly similar to the laughter of young children. During games of chase or rough wrestling, they pant rhythmically, sometimes opening their mouths in what researchers refer to as a play face. If the game becomes too rough or one animal genuinely becomes frightened, those sounds disappear almost immediately. Just as millions of years ago, the vocalization seemed to reassure everyone involved that the interaction remains friendly. Bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans display remarkably similar behaviors, suggesting that this ancient form of laughter may have existed long before our own species ever appeared. Perhaps even more surprising are the tiny animals that laugh in ways we cannot even hear. In laboratories, neuroscientists studying rats discovered that when young rats play together or are gently tickled by researchers, they emit rapid chirping sounds at around 50,000 hertz. Human hearing extends only to about 20,000 hertz, meaning these joyful squeaks occur in a world that is completely silent to us. Only specialized microphones reveal their existence. At first, the discovery seemed almost unbelievable. Rats, after all, are not animals most people associate with joy or playfulness. Yet the evidence continued to grow. Tickled rats actively sought out the researchers who had played with them, approaching eagerly in anticipation of more interaction. They weren't simply reacting to touch. They appeared to be enjoying the experience. The discovery transformed the way scientists thought about laughter. If tiny rodents, separated from us by tens of millions of years of evolution, possess something resembling laughter, then perhaps the roots of this behavior run far deeper than anyone had imagined. It suggested that laughter is not merely a product of intelligence or language, but part of a much older emotional system shared by many mammals. Long before humans painted cave walls or gazed at the stars, evolution may have already been experimenting with the simple idea that play should feel rewarding. This raises another fascinating question, one that nearly every child eventually asks. If laughter is such a natural response, why can't we make ourselves laugh by tickling our own bodies? Anyone who has ever tried quickly discovers the strange answer. The same feather-light touch that sends someone else into uncontrollable laughter feels almost meaningless when we do it ourselves. The reason lies within the remarkable predictive abilities of the brain. Every time you choose to move your own hand, your brain creates an internal prediction of exactly what that movement will feel like before it even happens. By the time your fingers reach your ribs or the soles of your feet, the sensation has already been anticipated. There is no surprise, no uncertainty, and therefore very little reason for the brain to react. When another person tickles you, however, everything changes. Even if you know it's coming, you cannot perfectly predict the exact timing, location, pressure, or movement of their fingers. Every tiny variation introduces a degree of uncertainty, and your brain must constantly update its expectations from one moment to the next. That uncertainty appears to be a critical ingredient. The playful unpredictability resembles the same unexpected twists that make jokes amusing, suggesting that surprise has been woven into laughter since its earliest beginnings. Tickling itself remains something of a mystery. Charles Darwin wrote about it in the 19th century, noting that most people instinctively laugh when tickled by someone they trust, yet react very differently when the same touch occurs in an uncomfortable or threatening situation. Modern psychologists have reached similar conclusions. Tickling seems to occupy a curious space between vulnerability and safety. It exposes sensitive parts of the body while simultaneously requiring enough trust that the brain interprets the experience as playful rather than dangerous. In many ways, tickling may be one of the purest demonstrations of laughter's original purpose. It is a game balanced delicately between uncertainty and reassurance, where the ancient message remains the same as it may have been millions of years ago: everything is all right. Another curious feature of laughter is that it spreads through groups with astonishing speed. You have probably experienced this yourself without giving it much thought. Someone across the room begins laughing uncontrollably. You don't know what happened. You haven't heard the joke. You may not even know the person. Yet almost instinctively, you find yourself smiling. Sometimes you even begin laughing simply because everyone else is. The laughter itself becomes contagious, almost as though it possesses a life of its own. Scientists believe this contagious quality reflects just how deeply social our brains have become. Throughout our evolution, paying close attention to the emotions of the people around us offered enormous advantages. If everyone nearby suddenly became frightened, it was wise to become alert before you even understood the danger. If everyone relaxed, perhaps the threat had passed. Laughter may have taken advantage of this same system. Rather than carefully analyzing whether something is safe, the brain often uses the reactions of those around us as a shortcut. Hearing another person laugh subtly shifts our own emotional state, encouraging us to relax alongside them. This tendency becomes especially noticeable in large groups. Researchers have found that audiences laugh far more often while watching a comedy together than when watching exactly the same material alone at home. The jokes themselves have not changed. What changes is the presence of other people. Every laugh reinforces the next one, creating a gentle ripple that spreads through the audience until strangers who have never met are briefly sharing the same emotional experience. For a few moments, dozens or even hundreds of individual minds become synchronized by one simple sound, echoing the same ancient social signal that may once have drifted through the forests of our earliest ancestors. As scientists continued exploring the effects of laughter, they began noticing that its influence extended far beyond simple emotions. A genuine laugh sets off a remarkable chain reaction throughout the body, affecting systems that at first seemed to have little connection to humor at all. Within moments, breathing becomes deeper and more rhythmic as the diaphragm contracts repeatedly, drawing fresh air into the lungs. The heart briefly beats faster before gradually settling into a calmer rhythm. Muscles throughout the face, chest, shoulders, and abdomen engage in an intricate sequence of movements that requires surprising coordination. Even though laughter often feels effortless, your body is quietly performing one of the most complex emotional expressions it is capable of producing. At the same time, the brain begins releasing a collection of chemicals that subtly alter the way we feel. Among them are endorphins, natural compounds often described as the body's own pain relievers. These molecules help reduce discomfort while creating feelings of warmth, relaxation, and well-being. Researchers have demonstrated this effect in surprisingly creative ways. In one series of experiments, volunteers watched either humorous films or emotionally neutral documentaries before undergoing mild pain tolerance tests. Again and again, those who had genuinely laughed were able to tolerate discomfort for noticeably longer periods of time. Their bodies had quietly changed the way pain was being processed, all because of a few moments of shared amusement. Stress hormones begin changing as well. Cortisol and adrenaline, chemicals that prepare us to respond to danger, often decline after periods of genuine laughter. Blood vessels relax, tension in the muscles gradually eases, and many people describe feeling lighter without quite knowing why. While laughter is certainly not a cure for illness or hardship, it appears to provide the body with a brief opportunity to shift away from vigilance and toward recovery. It is almost as though the ancient message of safety reaches not only the conscious mind, but every organ throughout the body. Doctors and psychologists have become increasingly interested in these effects over the past several decades. Hospitals around the world have experimented with bringing humor into children's wards through performers, storytellers, and specially trained volunteers. Patients often report feeling less anxious before medical procedures, while families facing difficult circumstances sometimes discover that laughter provides a small but meaningful sense of relief amid uncertainty. No one suggests that laughter replaces medicine or eliminates suffering, but it does seem capable of reminding people that moments of joy can still exist even during life's most difficult chapters. Perhaps this helps explain one of the strangest forms of laughter we experience. Almost everyone has laughed during a moment that wasn't funny at all. A nervous laugh during an awkward conversation. A quiet giggle after tripping over your own feet. Someone smiling while delivering bad news because they simply don't know how else to respond. These reactions can feel confusing, even inappropriate, yet psychologists have found that nervous laughter is surprisingly common. In situations filled with uncertainty, embarrassment, or emotional overload, laughter may help regulate feelings that would otherwise become overwhelming. Rather than reflecting happiness, it acts more like a pressure valve, allowing the brain to gently release emotional tension before it builds too high. This becomes especially noticeable during moments of shared embarrassment. Imagine standing before a large audience when your phone suddenly rings unexpectedly. For a split second, everyone freezes. The room is filled with uncertainty. Then you smile, laugh softly at yourself, and the audience laughs with you. Almost instantly, the tension dissolves. What could have become an uncomfortable silence instead becomes a shared human moment. Without realizing it, everyone involved has used laughter exactly as our ancestors may have done thousands or even millions of years ago, to transform uncertainty into reassurance. Even grief sometimes exists alongside laughter in ways that initially seem impossible to understand. Families gathered to remember a loved one often find themselves laughing together as they recall old stories, funny habits, or cherished memories. These moments do not diminish the sadness of the occasion. Instead, they seem to coexist with it, reminding us that human emotions are rarely experienced one at a time. Joy and sorrow, fear and relief, love and loss can all occupy the same conversation, sometimes even the same sentence. Laughter does not erase pain. It simply reminds us that pain is not the only emotion we are capable of feeling. This emotional flexibility may be one of laughter's greatest gifts. Unlike many instinctive behaviors that serve a single purpose, laughter seems remarkably adaptable. It can celebrate success, ease tension, strengthen friendships, encourage forgiveness, calm frightened children, comfort grieving families, and transform complete strangers into companions, if only for a few moments. Few behaviors in the animal kingdom appear capable of serving so many different roles while remaining instantly recognizable across cultures. And yet, after centuries of observation and decades of modern neuroscience, there remains something wonderfully incomplete about our understanding of it. Scientists have uncovered remarkable details about the muscles involved, the regions of the brain that become active, the chemicals released into the bloodstream, and the evolutionary history stretching back to our primate ancestors. But when researchers ask the deepest question of all, why this particular sound evolved instead of countless other possibilities, there is still room for thoughtful debate. Perhaps that uncertainty is fitting. Some of the most beautiful parts of being human refuse to fit neatly into a single explanation. Love, curiosity, wonder, and laughter. The more we learn about them, the richer and more fascinating they become, reminding us that understanding the mechanics of something does not diminish its magic. If anything, it allows us to appreciate just how extraordinary these ordinary moments truly are. As our journey comes to an end, it's remarkable to think that one of the most familiar sounds in our lives is also one of the oldest. Every laugh you have ever shared carries with it a history that stretches back millions of years, long before the first cities were built, before the first stories were written, and perhaps even before our ancestors could speak to one another with words. Somewhere in those ancient forests, playful calls echoed between young primates chasing one another through the trees, unknowingly laying the foundation for a behavior that would one day unite billions of people across the world. Today, laughter has become something far greater than a simple evolutionary adaptation. It fills family dinners with warmth, eases awkward first conversations between strangers, comforts us during difficult times, and celebrates the happiest moments of our lives. It reminds us that we are social creatures, deeply connected to one another in ways we often overlook. A single laugh can spread across a room in seconds, dissolving tension, strengthening friendships, and creating memories that linger long after the sound itself has faded. Few behaviors possess such quiet power, and fewer still can bridge cultures and languages so effortlessly. What makes laughter especially beautiful is that it resists being fully explained. Neuroscientists can map the regions of the brain that become active. Evolutionary biologists can trace its origins through our primate relatives. Psychologists can study the ways it shapes relationships and emotional well-being. Yet none of those discoveries take away the feeling of laughing so hard that tears fill your eyes, or the joy of hearing someone you love burst into uncontrollable giggles. Understanding the science doesn't diminish the experience. If anything, it makes it even more extraordinary. It reminds us that behind every ordinary moment lies an astonishing story, one written over countless generations by nature itself. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson hidden within something as simple as a laugh. We often imagine evolution as a story of sharper teeth, stronger muscles, or faster legs. But survival was never only about strength. It was also about trust, about cooperation, about finding ways to reassure one another that the danger had passed and that, for just a little while, everyone could relax. If the earliest forms of laughter truly began as a signal that said, "You're safe," then every genuine laugh we share today still carries a faint echo of that ancient message. Across thousands of generations, through every civilization and every corner of the planet, it has continued to whisper the same comforting idea. Maybe that is why hearing another person laugh feels so comforting, even when we don't know what they're laughing about. Somewhere deep within us, our brains still recognize that familiar sound. It tells us that life, at least in this moment, is good. that there is room for play, for connection, and for joy. It reminds us that despite all the complexity of the modern world, we are still connected to those distant ancestors who gathered together beneath the trees, finding comfort not through words, but through a shared sound that everyone understood. So the next time you find yourself laughing with friends, smiling at a child's giggle, or quietly chuckling to yourself over something unexpectedly amusing, take a moment to appreciate just how remarkable that moment truly is. What feels so ordinary has traveled through millions of years of evolution to reach you. It has survived changing climates, countless generations, and the rise and fall of civilizations. It is both deeply personal and profoundly ancient, one of the many invisible threads connecting every human being who has ever lived. Thank you for joining me on tonight's journey into one of humanity's oldest and happiest mysteries. If you enjoyed exploring the hidden science behind everyday life, I'd love to have you back for another adventure. Until then, wherever you are in the world, I hope you carry a little more curiosity with you, and perhaps even a smile. Sleep well, and stay curious.